Hey guys, it's me again. Hope y'all are doing good. We're going to read chapter 3, Friends. And this one's a little bit of a long one, but there are a couple pictures, so I'll show you them as we go. Kona had been born in the family room of a 5th grade teacher on Paradise Lane. Stumpy had been born in a sugar maple near the south end of Gooseberry Park. And Gwendolyn had been born in a palm tree on an island somewhere in the Caribbean. It was a miracle that the three had ever found each other. Of course, this was mostly Professor Albert's doing. He was a retired biology professor who loved to grow daylilies and listen to the saxophone. Professor Albert had never been married, liked living alone, and all the years he was a professor, he never minded the fact that he had no family. He was too busy teaching the cell structures of amphibians. But after he retired and found himself home so much of the time, he began to grow a bit lonely. And when he started talking back to the radio, "Oh yes, I love outpatient care too," he realized he needed a pet. So he bought himself a hermit crab. She was the loveliest of all the crabs in the pet store. Her shell was creamy white with wavy brown lines flowing across it. She was quite big, twice the size of the other crabs, and Professor Albert found her enchanting. So he brought her home from the store in a little paper box, named her Gwendolyn, and became her friend. Gwendolyn turned out to be a wonderful companion. Professor Albert carried her bowl from room to room in the house, depending on what needed doing. If he was in the kitchen baking banana bread, Gwendolyn was on the kitchen counter. If he was in the living room watching television, Gwendolyn was on the coffee table. If he was writing letters in his study, Gwendolyn was on the desk. Professor Albert knew that Gwendolyn liked him because she always pulled her head far up out of her shell to look at him when he talked to her. "Gwendolyn, did you know that each giraffe's marks are unique?" As the professor spoke, Gwendolyn's delicate antenna moved gracefully back and forth, and he knew she was listening carefully. Having been a teacher, he was quite good at picking out careful listeners. I can do that too. It was nice having her. Professor Albert was very happy with his hermit crab, and he had no plans at all to get a dog. He didn't know he needed a dog. He had never even thought about it. But one day, one of his neighbors, who had a sister who had a son in the 5th grade class of a woman who lived on Paradise Lane, told Professor Albert about the teacher's brand new litter of puppies. 12 in all. 12! The professor could not imagine so many puppies. He tried imagining 12 hermit crabs. So many bowls to carry. How did anyone manage 12 puppies? His neighbor said that the puppies were chocolate Labradors. Chocolate Labradors! The professor imagined children finding these instead of chocolate rabbits in their Easter baskets. The neighbors said the puppies were round like beach balls and that they loved to play. They played and played and played. And when Professor Albert heard this, something lit up inside him, something from when he was a boy. It had to do with dogs and playing. And before he knew it, he was telling his neighbor, "I would like to have one of those puppies." So Professor Albert found himself in the family room of a 5th grade teacher on Paradise Lane with 12 fat little puppies running all over him and all over each other and all over everything else in the room. He was delighted and overwhelmed and could hardly catch his breath. And he wondered how he would ever choose just one puppy from so many. They all looked pretty much the same. Should he just pick one up and go? But as he was trying to figure all this out, one of the happy puppies crawled into his lap and stayed. It stayed and stayed and stayed. The other puppies romped across him, licked his face, then ran off somewhere else, but this puppy stayed. The 5th grade teacher said to Professor Albert, "Of them all, that's the one who likes to be held the most. He likes company. He'll be glad when he's the only puppy somewhere." Professor Albert smiled. He knew all about liking company, and this little puppy was staying. He took the little puppy home. He named him Kona after his favorite coffee, and there in that house, Kona grew up. Of course, Gwendolyn and Kona became best friends right away. Though Professor Albert couldn't understand Gwendolyn's language, Kona could, and very quickly Gwendolyn assumed the job of puppy training. "No, Kona dear, you are not allowed to chew Professor Albert's slippers." "No, Kona dear, dogs do not eat encyclopedias." No, Kona dear, you must wait until you're outside to do that. Do you want to go outside? Then sit at the door and bark for Professor Albert. That's right, bark. Kona did everything Gwendolyn told them to do, and Professor Albert said to everyone that raising a puppy was the easiest job in the world. That amused Gwendolyn very much. It was a few years before Kona met the little red squirrel called Stumpy. Gooseberry Park was a very large park with many trees and many more squirrels, and to Kona, of course, all the squirrels looked alike. Kona went to the park every day with Professor Albert, and while the professor read books about snails and baboons and ants and lilies, listening to Charlie Parker on his Walkman, Kona explored the park and ignored the squirrels. A Walkman is like a portable radio. Then one day, as he was exploring, Kona came upon a little red squirrel who was trying to pull a plastic toy tractor up a tree. Holding the tractor in her teeth, the little squirrel pulled it halfway up the tree trunk, but the tractor slipped and crashed to the ground. She ran to the bottom to start all over again. Kona walked over to push to her. Perhaps if you pushed it, he suggested, as the squirrel began pulling at the tractor yet again. The squirrel opened her mouth. What? The tractor crashed. Oops, said Kona. Sorry. The little squirrel ran down to try once more. It's for my collection, she said to the dog. I haven't anything this big. Do you know what it's called? A tractor. I've seen them on television, Kona answered. Television? Said the squirrel. Kona sometimes forgot the world really did have wild animals in it. He couldn't imagine anyone not knowing what a television was. Never mind, said Kona. I simply suggested you push it. Put your paws on the back and roll it up the tree, just like a boy would. Good idea, said the squirrel, and she pushed the toy tractor all the way up the tree trunk and into her nest. She disappeared inside and was gone for several minutes. Kona started to walk away. I'm Stumpy. The squirrel's little red head popped out of her nest just as the dog was leaving. I'm Kona, cried the Labrador, happily turning back. What else do you collect? So he said, what else do you collect? And of course, Stumpy had a long list. And that is how Kona met Stumpy. He visited her tree every time Professor Albert took a park bench nap, which was quite often. And from Stumpy, he heard tales of life in Gooseberry Park, which he reported back to Gwendolyn, who commented on them as most elderly animals will. Leave it to a raccoon to make a mess of things. Oh, yes, indeed, crows are quite the smart Alecks. There's nothing like a young possum to warm the heart. Thank goodness for rabbits. These comments Kona took back to Stumpy, and in this way, they all became friends. It was a fine life, a life just right for babies. So tomorrow, I will record the chapter 4, who is going to introduce my favorite character. So I'm excited for you guys to get to meet him. I miss you guys so much. I hope you're doing well. Please don't hesitate to have your parents text me pictures of things that you're doing or email me or whatever. I miss you guys so much. Anytime they contact me, it's not a bother. I miss you guys. It helps me when I hear about the fun things that you guys are doing. So I'm working on a puzzle right now, so hopefully I'll be able to show you a picture soon. It's not that much done that it's impressive to see. So, all right. Love you guys. Bye.